Matter of fact, we're still scratching around here. You've probably also noticed this that has a lot of Americans scratching their heads when they see it. How many police officers in our cities have started dressing less like police officers and more like soldiers? You've seen them, right? Something we often see when we travel and we go to a lot of countries in like Latin America, for example, and it's a little disarming, right? Officer Friendly is starting to look more like Commando Joe in America. Not only that, but military officials are now getting equipment. And you know what they do with their old equipment from the military? They pack it up and send it to the United States, and police departments take it. They ship it to police departments who use it and then say, well, don't worry, we'll find a use for it. After all, it's generally free, right? Lately, though, more and more police officers and police departments, I should say, here in the United States have also manifested another trend that is different in that sense, with police not only sending, vehicles, but also sophisticated military intel gathering equipment and techniques. In other words, the same techniques they use on people overseas, supposed to be used against our war enemies, not against us. This is why this gets a little controversial. News with Rick Sanchez correspondent Michelle Greenstein has been looking into this for us, and she joins us now to share with us what she has learned.
You know, Rick, I think, again, as usual, you're hitting the nail right on the head, because we're really seeing these counterinsurgency tactics that were made for conflict abroad coming right home here. We're seeing the domestication of counterinsurgency. We're seeing it with DOD programs that give police departments military weaponry. We're seeing it with police departments using robot bombs to kill suspects. And The Intercept yesterday actually did a piece on the NSA targeting system that's now being used at the Mexico border. But most recently, we're seeing it with police using artificial intelligence to create what's called predictive policing. And this, of course, makes them even more powerful. Predictive policing algorithms are being used across the U.S. It's hard to know exactly what the numbers are because these are private companies, these are private vendors, but one of the leading vendors, called Predpol, claims that it's currently being used to protect 1 in 33 U.S. citizens right now. So I'm going to use New Orleans as an example. The New Orleans Office of Homeland Security installed hundreds of security cameras. It also pulls camera feeds from private businesses, from private homeowners, and these are systems that use artificial intelligence. So let's say you're a cop looking for an Asian woman in green shorts. That's your suspect.
Right.
You will get results faster. It'll only show you the Asian women in green shorts that were at the scene at the time. So another thing these systems do is that these cameras learn the normal motion activity of a scene, and then if someone does something quote-unquote unusual, it flags the activity. And these anomaly detections are already being used in police departments. Now,
is that what we're seeing? We have these.
That's correct.
So those little letters that we're seeing up there is a definition or a focusing in of something in particular.
Exactly. So it maps out all the activity on a certain street corner, in a certain public square, whatever. And if something is irregular, it calls attention to it.
Let me say something, because I think the persons who are watching us right now would think, look, if it helps them do their police work better,
right,
and if all they're doing is modernizing their techniques, good for them. I want them to catch the bad guys using this. It's the slippery slope thing, though, right? I mean, if they keep bringing back the stuff they're using against terrorists or our enemy, and they're using it against us, how far does this go? Where does it stop?
So like you're saying, it's very easy to sell this narrative that these cameras, that these intelligence gathering equipment are there for our protection, there to prevent crime. But let me take you back to New Orleans, because there are ethical consequences to this kind of technology being used by law enforcement. Like, for one, discrimination. The DOJ actually investigated the New Orleans Police Department, and they found that they repeatedly violated the Constitution and federal law by using excessive force, by targeting people based on race, by targeting people based on their ability to speak English, and failed to investigate actual cases of things like sexual violence. Even Tom Perez, who was the Assistant Attorney General at the time, said that these problems are, quote, wide-ranging, systematic, and deeply rooted within the culture of the department. But despite all of this, New Orleans actually entered into a partnership with a company called Palantir to make a predictive policing system. Palantir is a data mining company that actually came up made its money by working for the CIA and the Pentagon in Afghanistan. Now, this new system with Palantir uses arrest records, it uses police reports to predict crime, but without amending that data to address the violations that we just explained the DOJ uncovered. So we can tout this, like you almost did just now, as, great, efficient, data-driven decisions.
Correct.
But if the data itself is biased, if the system itself is biased, then the algorithms are going to replicate that bias, right? And remember, every police police encounter is potentially life or death, right? These are dangerous situations. So are there any accountability measures in place?
So I think what I hear you saying is that there's some kind of bias that we already have, by the way. By the way, we all have biases. We all can be somewhat prejudiced about certain things. If we use a technology that is super advanced, whatever our bias might be, innocent or not, it's magnified.
Right, which is why we need accountability measures in place, not just in New Orleans, because that's just one example, but nationwide. And according to an NYU Law Review paper that came out just weeks ago, those do not exist. They concluded that current claims by predictive policing vendors do not provide sufficient assurances that their systems adequately mitigate or segregate this data, which is why opponents like the Electronic Frontier Foundation are skeptical that the police can, kind of police itself when it comes to these automated, unsupervised systems making these calls that really could have someone's life in their hands.
And I'm glad somebody's watching over this, because I think in the end, even police officers that I've spoken to who are really good guys say, they tell me they're a little concerned about how this thing continues, where every day they get more and more stuff coming in from Afghanistan and Iraq,
right,
making them feel less like police officers serving the public.
And more like they're in war zones,
and
right?
more like they're in a war zone.
And discrimination is just one problem. That's just one, which is biased data, that these objective systems can, lead to corrupt policing. But there's also the possibility of using this type of system to persecute dissident voices. Like, what kind of impact is this going to have on our ability to organize, or maybe our own decision to self-censor because we know we're being watched on the time, which is why, none of these things like the military weaponry for police or, these AI techniques being used by police, these are not isolated incidents. This is really symptomatic of a larger new type of government that's really based on counterinsurgency warfare. And these strategies are coming right here to the streets of America.
Just because it can be used for good doesn't mean we should not be worried or watching to make sure it's not used for bad.
That's right. Technology itself is not good or bad. It matters what kind of system it's in.
Well done. All right. Thank you, Michelle. Good
Thanks,
explanation. I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.